So right now, it looks like we're in the middle of wine country, but we're actually in Dexter, Michigan.
Yeah, there's oak barrels all around this production facility. There's actually wild yeast flying through the air. You can't see it, but trust me, it's there. And all these things come together, and they combine to form the epic beers of Jolly Pumpkin.
Had to come and have some Jolly Pumpkin.
Jolly Pumpkin's pretty well known in this area. The beer's fantastic, it's great.
It's up there with the top, I'd say. They're consistent and they're really good beers.
You have more than enough variety up there to get the day going. This is the place to be.
Not only is Jolly Pumpkin the place to be if you want to grab a great beer, it's one of the most unique breweries in the state of Michigan, producing artisan sour-style beers from the mind of their founder, Ron Jeffries.
You're a pioneer as far as sour beers go. When did you make that jump?
We were drinking a sour ale in the garden one afternoon and just saying, wow, if we could just make beer like this, wouldn't this be awesome? And Lori said to me, well, why don't you? And I looked at her and I'm like, really? And she said, yeah. And I'm like, okay.
We invented American sour beer, and no brag, but we are still the best.
It's not a brag if it's true, Dan.
The Jolly Pumpkin Brewery is a sexy brewery. You're in this space with all this beautiful handcrafted, oak barrels, and they're all different shapes and sizes, and there's a history behind a lot of the different oak that's out there, and that it might have come from a winery in California, it may have been from a distillery in Kentucky.
The history of sour beer is traced back to Belgium, where brewers allowed wild yeast to interact with their beer through the oak barrels, changing the taste to a much more tart finish.
We make a normal beer, and then we put the beer into barrels that are basically these individual microcosms of all these microorganisms and bacteria that changes the beer into this huge kind of tart, acidic, very sour note that is the exact same way it was done, 600-700 years ago. The only thing that we do different is we use a little bit of stainless steel in the process.
The beer that you're consuming was made by a few people that are literally touching every piece, they're moving every hose, they're opening and shutting every valve, they're adding the ingredients. So there is a ton of passion in this business.
We're just a bunch of weirdos in Dexter that just want to make different beer.
So Jolly Pumpkin makes their beers and then they stick them into the oak barrels. But what does it taste like once it comes out? Well, that is something that you have got to experience.
The first one we have here is Bam beer, which is of course named after our brewery dog, Bam. We started with the Bam beer, which is just a normal French style farmhouse ale. Lightly tart, almost a really nice bitter kick from the dry hopping technique that we use in that as well. Which is a little bit different than most farmhouse ales, will be very, very smooth. But this one's a little bit more hopped up.
It's good. A little fruity, citrusy. I like it. I'd definitely say it's one of the better ones I've had.
It is delicious.
If you've never tried a sour beer before, this brew is a great place to start.
Ron and Lori made this beer and couldn't really figure out what to name it, right? Then their dog Bam got hit by a car, and he's fine because Jack Russell Terriers bounce.
And so in honor of that kind of whole traumatic bounce back kind of an attitude that Jack Russells have, I said, okay, we will do a beer and name it after a dog. And so we did our Bam beer.
Jolly Pumpkin has locations in Dexter, Ann Arbor, Traverse City, and they've recently added a tap house in Detroit.
We have a very passionate fan base. Ron has made incredible beers.
And I want to share this beer with everyone in the world because it's just that good. And if you don't like sour beers, it's just because you haven't had the right one yet. So.
It's not for everybody. Sour is tough to take sometimes.
Sour is it's kind of acquired taste, You're trying all the beers, that's kind of like the next step. It's good stuff though.
Love the sours. I'm a big fan of the sour beers.
Yeah, I don't really feel like there's a need to try other sour beers after having these ones. They're amazing.
The important thing is to make a beer that tastes awesome and is artistic. And so the reason I brew beer is to create art. That in itself is hugely fulfilling to me. What is even more rewarding is when we're at events and somebody really connects with a beer and they really get into the flavors and they see what I'm trying to do with the beer and they're like, how did you do this? This beer blew my mind. And that's probably the most satisfying.
And the reason we love having our tap room and having our tasting rooms is because we can engage with the customer to educate. And when you pick up a beer like Jolly Pumpkin and you taste it for the first time, you may be completely shocked. And hopefully you're shocked in a pleasant way. So being able to engage with the customer is so important.
Just this kind of perishable work of art, basically done the old-fashioned way to kind of bring out these big sour notes that were originally an accident, and we're making them just the best.
When you're tasting a very complex beer like Jolly Pumpkin, you need to do it the correct way. Fortunately, Dan was happy to show Shannon and I the proper tasting technique.
You always eat and drink with your eyes first, so the first thing you want to do is hold it up to some light. So you can kind of start to judge it right away, which is called the SRM. I'm not going to bore you with what that means, but basically the color of the beer. The second thing to do is probably the least snobbish, is just pass it under your nose while breathing in.
I call this the drive-by.
I like it. Be a beer snob. Get in your nose, all up in it. And then you drink everything right down, right? And this isn't wine, so don't spit it out. And also, don't swallow it down right away. Swish it all up in your gums. Get it all around there. That right there is the Oro de Calabaza, which is our Belgian-style golden ale, strong golden ale.
Oh, that's good. That's real good.
It's sour, super sour. It's amazing.
It's got a sour taste to it, but also hard kick to it, you know? Like when you taste it, it's smooth, but then it punches in your face.
Most Belgian strong goldens tend to be kind of sweet, so in order to kind of counteract that, I guess you could say Ron put a little bit of peppercorn in there as well. Instead of being super sweet, it creates this nice balance of flavor that JP is kind of known for.
And that's one thing you guys do great that I think maybe people are like, what, you put peppercorn in there? Like, what are you doing, like seasoning your beer? But it's subtle, but it makes such a difference when you do it right.
We're known as the balanced brewery, I guess you could say. The art of subtlety.
Going forward, I'd really like to continue to make more beer.
And we're hiring great people, and we're growing in small little communities, and especially here in Dexter, Michigan, where we're at.
The vision behind Jolly Pumpkin was to be a global boutique brand, to be artistic and esoteric, and to be, I think, a global brand, you have to have a global presence, even if it's really small and there's just like one bar in Hong Kong that sells our beer. At least there's one bar in Hong Kong, and hopefully the beer's fresh.
Ron has said this many times. He'll make as much sour beer as people want to drink.
Well, guys, we had a great time at Jolly Pumpkin. Thank you for having us. And not only that, but we have a celebrity appearance. Bam the dog is here with us.
And I think that deserves a special cheers. Bam.
Bam.